Hello, good evening. I'm John Anagnost with the City of Raleigh. We're here at the Comfort Suites on Corporation Parkway in our Eastern Station group for the new Bern Station Area Planning workshops. We've been here all week at the Comfort Suites talking to residents and business owners here at east of 440 on New Bern Avenue about the future of this corridor that will soon have bus rapid transit service. And tonight we have our closing presentation for the week's workshop. We have Steve Carney and Rhonda Bell from Stantec, and we're going to be sharing with you what we've developed over this week, and so you can learn all about the future plan that's going to be coming in the next few months, and then you can keep up with the process after that. So I'm going to turn it over to Steve.
Thank you, John, and thank you for coming tonight. As we've been mentioning, this is always a fast and messy process, but we have our whole team here together, and it's the best way to really begin to build a framework and to help to get really kickstart this development of this plan. So I use the word messy. That also means unfinished, evolving, draft. So we're getting closer, and with your continued input, we are going to continue to evolve this plan and get it to the greatest place that it can be. So tonight's agenda, a little bit about how we got here, a brief overview. We did this on Monday night. And then we're going to kind of jump really into the, what we're learning, and then go into the, how do we put it together? What does it really mean, in putting it together? What are some of the ideas that have emerged from the community, from the stakeholders, and from others? And then, how we actually compile it. And then finally, we'll end on setting the stage, which is, how is this plan going to be implemented? How is it going to work? What is it going to do? What is the city really going to do to support the ideas and the vision and the opportunities that you're going to see tonight? So real quickly, this is not a new discussion. The Wake Transit Plan identified these opportunities, the BRT lines, in 2016. We have worked all the way through those. These different moments came along. It is now 2021. This planning effort is really looking at the area around the BRT line and New Bern BRT line, and really how and what potential changes may be coming. How do we take advantage of this? How do we listen to the community, make sure that we preserve the character here, and all the different pieces that we've been hearing. And again, this is the third charrette. We've done one for the western, the middle, and now we're talking about the eastern tonight. And really, we always say we listen first, and what is the community telling us? All week long, we've had people coming and going from this place. This has been open the entire week. And, we've got a few we could, and we really would love to get more input. So this is not just ending this week. Please continue to provide us our input. But you can start to begin to see all of the ideas. Safety is something that we heard over and over. But I often like to just read a couple of the quotes of the visions that community members have come. And this one is great. I'd love to see the Eastern Station section develop the vibrant shopping centers in a way that encourages residents, citizens to be able to enjoy the amenities. It would also add value to the BRT line. One, and this was kind of one of our favorites, we've lived in this neighborhood for 16 years. Our son is 17 years old and will be heading to college soon. We sometimes talk about moving once we become empty nesters, but now I think we'll stick around a little longer and see what happens. This is exciting. And as we kind of talk about that, it is exciting. We take all of these comments, these ideas, these voices, and we build it into a vision. Again, you'll see an emerging vision statement, a draft vision statement. This can and will change the more information the community tells us. But these are another piece I do want to read because it's important. And our neighborhoods are safe, welcoming, and walkable. Our retail centers represent local business with a wide variety of goods and services. New multi-use paths connect us to shopping and to the rich regional network of greenways already weaving through our neighborhoods. Most importantly, our community evolves in a way that maintains affordability for existing residents, offers expanded housing choices for future residents, and prioritizes safety and security at all levels. So we begin to bring that down into very specific goals. And these are our core goals. Our number one, improved safety will guide decisions at all levels. Our streets are for people, not just cars. Aging and vacant commercial areas redevelop into mixed-use centers that offer the opportunity to park once and then walk to the variety shop, services, entertainment, and park-like amenities. Businesses we love will remain and have new customers and opportunities. New housing options will offer a variety of sizes and price points. Existing regional greenways will become more accessible through enhanced neighborhood paths and trails. Again, as we begin to see the ideas coming forward, think back to these core goals. So what are we learning? We have known from the beginning and from everyone we have spoken to that housing and housing affordability or the level of attainment that people can get to in terms of their housing, the housing quality, and the business support are critical. And we need to always be including these. We take a bit of a national look right now, and you see in red where people are leaving, and you see in green where people are coming to. Raleigh, of course, people are coming to. The population is growing, and it's putting the pressure that many of you have told us, and we are clearly seeing as we tour this area and see the changes and the opportunities and the development that's happening. But that also creates pressure on housing and housing affordability. So what can we do about it? Well, we need to come up with a bucket of tools. We recognize there's not going to be one solution, and we need to make sure we identify and bring into this plan all of the different solutions or tools that can help provide long-term affordability in this area. It's going to be funding. Where is it? Different funding sources. Where is it coming from? How can zoning policy, how can that potentially incorporate or help to support affordable housing? We're already working through these. We know with the demographic changes that we mentioned on Monday, we have a much higher level of singles, couples, single parents with children. Oftentimes we need to make sure that the housing mix, the single family residential is great and it works for many, but it's now the majority are looking for other options and they fit. And we want to make sure that we provide those in the right locations. And it really scale and content matter. And it really is, and I'll add here, how it fits into the existing character and how it works here. I mean, that is what the community is telling us. Yes, we need it. Yes, we're excited about it. Yes, let's make it fit. And another piece to it is we often hear or talk in these terms called AMI, area median income. But the story really is who are the people over here and what can they afford? And how do we make sure that we are capturing all of those? And it is never just one type. So we need to stitch all of these together. We need and we know more supply, more options, and more supply, maybe how many can we fit within these areas? How many different choices? Accessory dwelling units, for example. We want to pull all of these together, as I've already mentioned, the scale, the context, and knowing what to ask for. And this is what I said, the word affordability is not a perfect word. It means different things to different people. Sometimes you'll hear housing attainment. What can I attain? Where can I get to? And what is that? As this growth happens, more housing supply comes into play. And this is what we do. An all above strategy is to cover all of these. And so we break it down, and this is beginning to tell a story. This is not 100% accurate, but it's a good assessment of what the needs are of the community. And you can't just say 30% of their income. That's an important part. But what about what's their debt? A younger family may have much higher levels of debt than an older family. And how much money is coming out of their pockets every single month? That is what we really want to understand so that we can match the opportunities and the housing for them. So just to go through an example of all of these, we take them, and I'm going to, because we heard this one before, legacy homeowner. They are older, seniors. Their net income, $65,000. Their monthly debt is $400. They can pay $1,550 a month. They can actually afford a house up to $325,000. I highlight them because we spoke to them 2 weeks ago. They came up and they said, you essentially described us to a T. And we're concerned that in a few years, our cost per month is maybe too high for us. So it's an example, and this makes it easy to understand and easy for people to understand that we're all represented here. We're all part of it. And our plan is looking to really help all from every level, young professionals, students, all the way through families, seniors, the whole spectrum, we're going to work through. And we're continually looking to assess who might we be missing, who's here right now, where is affordable housing, and how does our plan ensure that those levels are maintained and or increased in this area. And again, we're looking at all types. We identify the roadblocks that are occurring, and then we look from the old and new strategies, from the 30 to 80% AMI area where we know is a hard area to fill. And we got to look at different ways of doing it through all the different tools. At the same time, we want to support our local businesses. That's another strong message we've been hearing. And I can say for certain in this area, the local businesses, the retail, the restaurants, people have said, we want those. And that became actually a core tenet of this week to how do we kind of come up with some ideas that protect those, support them, and help them become part of the future. You'll hear about that shortly. But we want to make sure that we have all of these in place. And really, how do we build create support? So it's all of these different toolkits that we go through and work to have some resources to community builders, nonprofits, and the local banks. And again, so at the people, the businesses and the people are often connected because they live here, their businesses are here, and we want to make sure that all of this comes and grows with this plan and this effort. So now we're talking about how do we take all of the information we're hearing, all that we're learning, and the ideas and the potential opportunities within this area. And with this, I'd like to introduce Rhonda, who's going to talk a bit about the green spaces and others, and then getting into some of the opportunity sites that we've been looking at that you all will very likely recognize. Thank you.
Thanks.
Here.
The green spaces. When we say green spaces, we can mean a wide variety of things. We can be in small neighborhood parks, pocket parks, large regional parks. They can be parks where you sit and read a book. They can be parks where you play soccer, football, or what have you. These can be greenways that connect you to natural resources like stream corridors. And we all know that we've always loved parks and being outdoors, but one of the really big lessons of the pandemic is we really, really love being outdoors. So when we took a look at the Eastern Station area, one thing that really struck us is there are not actually any formal Raleigh parks within the station area. There is Mulberny Park just outside of the station area, but most of the parks that you see, the kind of light green that are kind of colored in shapes of any kind here, are actually private parks that are part of these residential developments that you see. The dashed lines are future greenways, and then you can see that we've got existing greenways really close, another one over here. And so the Eastern Stations is really unique in that instead of being in neighborhoods that have lots of traditional parks in them, their proximity to existing greenways, and these are big, long greenways, is really impressive. So as we look at recommendations for the Eastern Stations, instead of looking for new parks, although there is the potential for a future park down here as this landfill moves on to its next stage of life, really what we're looking to do is to make these greenways, future and existing, more accessible by making the connections we need into the neighborhoods. And then examples of those greenways, we've got the Crabtree Creek Greenway. That was the one that you saw over on the left side of the screen. And then the Neuse River Trail Greenway, that was just off the right side of the screen. And then Mulberny Park. And when we talk about making those neighborhood connections to the regional scale, these are some examples of what those linear, we can call them linear parks. They might be mixed use paths or shared use paths just off the side of the roadway. But the idea is to make them more than just a sidewalk where we can, to make them a little bit greener, a little bit more luxuriously recreational to use. Putting it together, now we look at opportunity sets. So this is looking at patterns in the neighborhood of what we have and where we might see opportunities. So we looked at this in layers. So the first layer we looked at that you see on here as orange, these are projects that are either already in progress or have formal plans into the city. So these are changes that you're going to see coming to the neighborhood. Over here, this is going to be just under 200 new residential units right over there by the Beltline. We've got a small bit of additional retail coming in here on a previously vacant site. Many of you are probably familiar with the Amazon Fulfillment Center that's just about completed down here. And then the Raleigh Beach Road, did I get that right?
Mhm.
I always try to insert extra words. The Raleigh Beach Road, entirely residential development over here. There is an easement running through the middle of it. That's Duke Energy, and another new greenway is slated to go through that, according to the draft greenway plan that's up for public comment right now. So this is interesting in that we see residential approaching Hedingham right here, and we'll talk about that more later. So these are underway and planned. Infill opportunities. The first level of infill opportunities that we're seeing is down here. This is a very low density, mostly single family residential area, pretty heavily wooded. Some of the roads in there are actually dirt. And we see this as an opportunity to change the zoning so that it allows more density. And this is, we call this an infill opportunity at the current homeowner's discretion. So if they choose to build at a higher density, or if somebody buys properties in there, multifamily will be an option. But if current homeowners are perfectly happy with where they are, their property value will likely increase as a result of that upzoning, but they are perfectly capable of staying there without any change. Our second level of opportunities is what we're calling near term, and we don't have a specific time frame associated with this because, as always, this is fairly market driven, and we have the Tower Marketplace site over here, vacant mall, and this is interesting because we've identified 3 sites and they represent 3 different scales of development. So this is the Tower Marketplace that's vacant over on the west side of the eastern station areas. And then there is the Wilder's Grove, a little bit smaller, right there on New Hope Road. And then this is I'm calling this one Hedingham Opportunity Site. So we have a little bit more explanation on each of those. The first is Tower Marketplace. As you're all familiar with, traditional interior focused mall. There still is that cafeteria in the back that's functioning, but the rest of the mall is vacant. So this is the largest site that we're identifying to demonstrate one scale of development. So this is about 14 acres. And this is probably what we would call a master development opportunity, where different parcels in here may be sold or under the design guidance of a single developer, but could be developed by different entities. Because of the large size of the site, we have opportunity for a pretty varied mix of uses. So they're all the same color, but we have some office here and here. And then we have what we would call residential mixed use. So we have a kind of a town center, a main street with amenities and a public park and plaza space in the middle. So we'd see retail and restaurants and shops along this main spine with residential condominiums and apartments above it. And then taking the density down a little bit in the back, more towards the future greenway up here, you could see a significant number of townhomes. So in this development, you would get office, retail, residential, and that residential is likely to be both for rent and owner occupied. These are some examples of what that town center, what an amenitized community center might look like. And this really responds to what we heard from a number of community members who came in this week, that they'd really like a place where they can drive to, park once, and then walk to a whole variety of destinations. They could get their nails done, have a bite to eat, get a coffee, maybe go see a movie. So we're talking about shopping, services, and entertainment all in one area, and you only have to park once. You don't have to go from errand to errand to errand. The second site, Wilder's Grove, right here on New Hope Road. And there is there's an existing grocery store, DMV, and a variety of furniture shops in here to ring a bell there. And what we might see on this site, and most importantly, right here, step back and use the pointer. This is the turnaround and the final terminus for the new BRT line. So the really exciting thing about this site is you can literally walk out your front door and get on the new bus rapid transit. So this site is smaller, 2 buildings, probably be built in phase 1 and phase 2, but we can really take advantage of the TOD density bonus That's part of the TOD overlay, which allows up to 7 floors of development. It doesn't mean it has to go to 7 floors, but it allows that bonus if it includes affordable housing. So by going as high as we can here, we can get the most number of people that we can, both next to the Walmart that's here, but also next to the bus station. This is an example of what that might look like, and we gave it the name BRT Village. So you can see that we have the new BRT station here, and it is a more formal, bit larger station than you're used to seeing for just a regular bus stop. And then we've got the 2 residential buildings. There might be a little bit of like cafe, newspaper, something to buy right before you wait for the bus. And then we've got a green spine, that idea of linear open space, moving down between these 2 buildings that could even extend across the entire site if the rest of that mall might redevelop in the future as a phase 2 as land values go up and development interest increases. And then finally, the last opportunity site we have is a very small one over here on the east side of the Walmart parking lot. And this was just looking for a creative opportunity to get a very small redevelopment, just 1 building. And this would probably be 5 floors of residential over a floor of retail. And that retail would have, there is an existing strip mall here. This retail would have better exposure, both to New Bern Avenue out here and be very visible here from the parking lot for this big box store. The other reason that this interests us as a potential redevelopment site is, as I mentioned earlier, as we look at existing projects, there is more residential development going in and approaching the side of Headingham Road over here. And there's also that easement where the Duke Energy easement where we expect to see a greenway connection. So living here, you would have access to a whole row of restaurants, a slightly expanded green connection over here, so you could have a very pleasant walk to the BRT station that would be just off this on the left side. All your shopping needs that you could meet here, and then easy access out this road. And this is a new road that's dedicated but not built. Connect to the new greenway and connect to the regional trail system. This is an example of what that might look like. Again, we're looking at like 5 or 6 floors. Possibly, as I said, some of these have retail on the bottom. And because this is a smaller scale development, as opposed to some of the others we saw, which would include structured parking in them, this is probably surface parked behind the building. So midterm projects. So these, again, these are what we expect would be new development that would be catalyzed by those 3 projects that we just talked about. So after these projects, the Tower Marketplace, Wilder's Grove, and what we're calling the bonus site next to Walmart, they might spur and encourage additional development. And that could be development around the area here. Adjacent, possibly the rest of that mall might develop and turn over. And then more of the properties that right now are kind of industrial and light industrial uses that would connect with this residential. So we start to see more critical mass along the roadway here of residential. And then long-term, there's a couple of sites that we might expect to see if these owners are interested or market development interest comes in. This is the nursery with which you're all familiar, and as well as another aging mall. Has fairly good occupancy, but that doesn't mean it might not be updated in the future, as well as a number of additional parcels within the neighborhood that could probably go into residential development. Again, none of these are sure things. These are just sites that have potential and might be attractive in the future. And again, as we said with the upzoning at the beginning, these are really at the owner's discretion. And then putting it together, our third category, all of this information is fantastic and wonderful under a big umbrella of what we heard, safety and connectivity. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Timothy to talk about how we're going to enrich some of the connections that are already.
Excellent. So I guess we started with the land use pattern, and now it's time to shift towards the transportation or mobility pattern. So going back to our theme of beginning with the problems and issues, at the very beginning, safety, especially crossing at those signalized intersections on New Bern Avenue, is our #1 issue to deal with. It's certainly been something we've heard from everyone who's come through the door this last week. Speeding cars and commuters, because that is really what New Bern Avenue, the corridor, has been historically. We're trying to see how that corridor will evolve over the next few decades. Gaps in the sidewalk, particularly getting you across the 440 Beltline, is a significant challenge for the Eastern Station to deal with. And lastly, some of those roadway connections, and those would be minor roadway connections, not brand new boulevards. So from the mobility perspective, we care about safety first, which means that we're talking about pedestrians primarily. We're going to sort of concentrate on making recommendations that begin at the BRT stations and work outward. We're focusing on those high quality intersection crossings where there's a traffic signal where you can safely cross on either side of the road. Examining where those minor roadway connections, and Rhonda did a great job of showcasing some of those minor connections already through future developments. And then of course, we've already talked about the regional greenway connection. So just to pause for a moment, because we are planning for everyone when it comes to mobility, all forms of walking, biking, driving, or riding. So whether you're on 2 feet, 2 wheels, 4 wheels, or even a lot more like 18 wheels, we are trying to find the best compromise for you. With that in mind, we are prioritizing safety first, and let's just start with an acknowledgement that there are people out there right now who are dependent upon walking as their means of transportation, and we have to make sure that safety is our primary concern, because these conditions are happening regardless of what we're designing for in the long term. Okay, so let's talk about pedestrians first, because that is the critically most important thing. So let's begin at the system level. We're starting very broad. Some of these lines we've already spoken about, whether it's a shared use path connection, whether it's some internal streets that we've shown already where we can have enhanced sidewalk connections, or it's some of those very large, high quality intersections in orange, trying to get you across New Bern Avenue safely. We're going to show some specific examples, the stars, the 2 stars shown in there, one of which is on Trawick and the other one is over by Beacon Plaza. Beginning with Beacon Plaza. So this is looking at Corporation Parkway. However, you're in the shopping center looking out. Right now, there is absolutely no pedestrian amenities to get you to, through, or across safely. And just as an anecdote, to the left of this image, there is an existing bus stop. So this is a place where people are getting on and off the bus, coming into the shopping center and going back out safely. So this is the existing conditions. What we would envision is much more multimodal. Corporation Parkway, as it stands right now, is 5 lanes wide. However, it only has the number of vehicles that will support maybe only 3 lanes. So the good news is we have 2 lanes to deal with in a road diet condition. What that means for us from transportation planning perspective is we have the opportunity for some separated bicycle lanes on each side. And then near the intersections, we have the opportunity for a pedestrian refuge island to safely get you across this once very wide roadway, but now right-sized for its current condition, speed, and use. That's the concept. Moving on a little further west to Trawick at Tower Marketplace. The existing conditions showcases that right now this corridor is being used by pedestrian. This worn path extends more than a quarter mile up to the north, maybe even further, because people are walking to the shopping center and back home again. Again, there is currently no pedestrian amenities to get you across this driveway or across Trawick. As you can see in the very foreground, New Bern Avenue kind of runs east-west further on down the slope. So right now, the conditions for pedestrians are unsafe and just sort of lacking. What we would hope for a concept is to extend the sidewalk further north, to have an additional sidewalk into the shopping center, because that's what we're trying to connect to, but much more pedestrian friendly to get you across the driveway. And then of course, as you're crossing Trawick, one of the most dangerous roadways in our corridor, a pedestrian refuge island. So you only have to cross one segment, wait, and then cross the other segment. So strategies and concepts moving forward from a pedestrian perspective, those are just 2 examples. Now, shifting to roadways in the vehicle mode in particular, we just want to stop and acknowledge that not all streets are the same. There's many varieties. And so when we show an example, sometimes it's one of the boulevards or major corridors, and sometimes it's more of a neighborhood street or a complete street. So there's a lot of different flavor to go with, whether there's higher speeds or higher volumes. And so there's a lot of potential opportunities in between these different variety of roads and streets. Now, the first example we have for you is that intersection of Trawick and New Bern. We just showed it kind of down the slope in the last photo. Right now, currently, there are 2 pedestrian crossings. So depending on which way you're coming, you might need to cross the intersection in the south and then cross New Bern Avenue to the north, and then come back to the west side again. So essentially you're crossing 3 different segments to only cross 1 time of the roadway. So this is the existing conditions. There is a pedestrian refuge island in the middle where you can stop and wait. We consider this adequate pedestrian improvements, but there's a lot more that can be done to make this much safer for pedestrians and make sure we're not causing any excessive delay for the vehicle mode. So number 1, there's a lot going on in this graphic, but we can add that additional leg on the western side. So if you are coming from the west, you don't have to cross 3 segments. You only have to cross 1. There's an additional pedestrian refuge island on the western side where you can stop and wait before proceeding on. And more importantly, the free-flowing right turn lane that exists right now, which essentially allows trucks and delivery vehicles to speed up as they go around this curve, is something we want to fill in. We want to make sure that the curb is still adequate for large turning vehicles. So we put on a tractor trailer vehicle and show that it can still make that turn from the middle of one of the existing travel lanes and make that turn before north onto Traywick without conflicting with the new pedestrian refuge island to the north as well. So we're drawing in the curve to make it easier for pedestrians, making a shorter distance to cross, while still allowing that turning vehicle and the largest vehicle in this corridor necessary. Just highlighting some of the additional amenities there as well. There would also be the ADA curb ramps for pedestrians at each corner, the pedestrian refuge islands on both sides, and high visibility crosswalks. And with this added landscape, possibly some shade trees as well. Okay, so one more concept design there. Further on down the corridor on New Bern Avenue, there's the potential for a mid-block crossing option between the signalized intersections. There are a variety of mid-block crossing treatments, and there are engineering protocols to kind of decide what's the most appropriate option to choose from. I've only highlighted 2 here. The top image is what's called a Danish crossing, where you cross half, you turn your body physically towards traffic and wait for it safe to then cross the other half. It's much like a pedestrian refuge island, it's just split in the middle to give you time and pause to wait. The bottom is actually a rectangular rapid flashing beacon, where when you activate these and the lights go back and forth, vehicles are supposed to stop at a non-signalized intersection at a mid-block crossing location. So there's at least 2 options for a mid-block crossing along New Bern Avenue and other roadways in this section of the corridor. But these are just 2 we kind of wanted to present as potential opportunities. Now, shifting to the bicycle amenities, because we are walking and biking more since the pandemic. There are a lot of planned bicycle connections to be made, some of which would also be for pedestrians to connect you to those regional greenway systems, where they would be enhanced side paths along the side of a road, because we have those opportunities because there's adequate right-of-way. So the major green lines are those important or more significant bicycle connections. Some of the blue bike lanes or separated bicycle lanes are some of the bike-specific, bike traditional amenities that aren't really for pedestrians. And then of course, crossing at those high-quality intersections. Just like pedestrians, bicyclists need those safe places to cross at New Bern Avenue. We want to show you one example along New Hope Road up here to the north, and just remind you that this was one of those development sites that Rhonda talked about near the BR station a little further south. So this would feed right into it in the near future. So this is what the right-of-way looks like right now. It's just off New Hope Road. It's right now, portion of it is using for storm drainage and runoff, but we can still kind of utilize this area already. So maybe it'd be a curved linear side path. And so it's much more of a bicycle and pedestrian amenity focused, but leads you from the north down south towards the BRT station and hopefully into that development site in the near term future. So you have a nice separated and safe connection to get on that regional connection to regional greenways. So one concept there. Much further west, we want to talk about the challenge of getting over and around the 440 Beltline ramps. So we've come up with the most logical and shortest opportunity is to utilize a portion of the outside lane of travel, making sure we can get around existing ramps and maybe redesign some of their geometry to make them safer for pedestrians while not disrupting the vehicular flow as well. Just want to highlight that there's a second alternative that we explored as well. It is to take you away from New Bern Avenue, across an overtop on a bridge, much like the one over at Wade Avenue, and then bring you back. This alternative would be much more expensive, and would add at least 3 minutes to your walk time from point to point. So this is an example of what that would look like on the south side of New Bern Avenue. Right now, there's 4 lanes plus a shoulder, 54 feet of pavement. However, if we can make sure the free-flowing ramps align properly and still get traffic flow, I'm hoping we can utilize one of those lanes for a 2-way separated bicycle and pedestrian lane. One example would have flex post bollards as separation and then pedestrian scale lighting. The other one would be much more of a traditional safety enhancement with using concrete barriers. Higher level of safety, perhaps there's an opportunity to use public art on the inside and make them a little bit more fun and entertaining to actually use this corridor. So concepts A and B. Now, Rhonda did a wonderful job of showcasing some of those development sites and what those potential opportunities could be. We want to recognize that land use and transportation are directly related. So remembering back to the phasing in the near term and the midterm and the long term, all those development sites are shown here. We just want to make sure that regardless of when those phasing happen, they still meet some of those mobility opportunities that we've shown here, and make sure we're layering them all together in the near, mid, and long term, so that not only are people redeveloping these sites, moving to this area, but capitalizing on the mobility resources that are here and connecting you to those potential future greenways to the north, over the Neuse River Greenway as well, or along New Hope Road, the side path we just showed as a concept as well. So stitching it all together, laying it on top of one another, and making sure that the system and some of these strategies will work for you.
Thank you, Timothy. Okay, so we've just shown you all of these ideas, potential opportunities, a vision that is growing and will continue to grow as we work through this. But so the next question is, well, what does this mean? What is the plan actually going to be, and what's going to be in it? And what will the city be doing to help make this change happen? Well, the plan itself actually becomes that mechanism, and it will make the recommendations so that we can get the tools and the right policy in place. So right now, this is what, this are the steps. This is how we set the stage and can help, move forward through into implementation. It's a land use and zoning amendment. This is increasing the density, increasing the heights, creating systems that, favor and encourage affordable housing. Significant redevelopment is anticipated and in selected nodes along the corridor, and we're identifying the best places where that can really work and be, transformative and supportive, and and places to go to. It is looking kind of at this nodal, these smaller area development concepts. They'll include regulatory and policy, recommendations. And again, just to take any of the examples that Ron just said and looked at, they'll be higher, on these places where it really makes sense. And by going higher, we can, have, additional affordable housing. The TOD overlay, that's exactly what, when you hear the term density bonuses, that's what it means, an extra story or 2 stories. And with that, we're going to make sure there's affordable housing within this. So this place is an opportunity and a place for all to move to. It's designed to support these dense, walkable environments, these town center environments that we went through. All of these are the regulations that go into place that lay the groundwork and then can help attract the development to these areas. You heard a lot about the streets and the mobility and the transportation. We're making updates to the transportation policy to support this development hierarchy of mobility choices, and update just the policies and regulations to help make all of this happen. Very importantly, as we know, obviously with the BRT, a major infrastructure enhancement and into this area, but that is not the only piece. There is a whole spectrum of infrastructure improvements that are focused for everyone, again, for all that Timothy and we've all mentioned, and that is to help improve the pedestrian experience, to increase the sidewalks, the bicycle network. These are all the improvements and real money going into this area to really improve the conditions across. And that is what we're looking for, just to encourage us for active transportation options, walking, biking, prioritizing safety at all times. As we said, safety is going to be a guiding factor in every decision, every policy that comes to place. And then ultimately the urban design goals and, further study, there's more to come. The, our regulatory and policy, recommendations, they'll encourage development of walkable mixed-use nodes at the station locations. That's specifically what we're working towards in this whole program. And then again, the housing affordability policies, what we had mentioned earlier in the presentation, it's, to support the small businesses and allow all residents to benefit from this transit, this opportunity, and this investment. So what are the next steps as we wrap up the end of this presentation? We've got October 4th to the 8th, the Middle Eastern Station workshops. We were just wrapping those up right now. We're doing a bike and pedestrian safety summit. That will be on October 15th. And then the winter of 2022, we are pulling this plan together. The drafts will be emerging. You'll be able to see it. As we say to all of these pieces, at every step of the way, we look for, we encourage, and we really want to bring in the community's, comments and inputs into this. Because again, you're here, this is your area, your vision, and your plan, and we need to make sure that as this area changes, the community is at the table and participating in that change and helping it make the change that we all are looking for. So with that, let me just put a final plug. If you Google Raleigh, New Bern area plan, station area plan, you'll find it, or go to the Raleigh's government website and you can easily find it from there. So please come, all this information will be online. There's multiple ways to provide us inputs, comments through the website. And again, we really encourage that. The more that we hear from you, the more the vision is coming from your voices. And I'm about to open up for questions, and what I will say to our new guests who have arrived, after the questions, I'm going to give you a personalized speed version of this presentation so you can see exactly what we just went through.
Actually, before we do the questions, we did have somebody who joined the meeting a little bit late, and I think I may have not noticed that he was in the waiting room on the Zoom meeting. So if we want to go back to the development concepts and just go through those again, because we do have somebody joining virtually who I think missed that, as well as the folks who joined us in person. I think that would be good.
Okay.
Did you want to go through that kind of layered plan or just the 3 opportunity sites?
Yeah, let's just do the 3 opportunity sites. I think that's the big takeaway there.
Okay.
All right, let's get back. Near term. And the next one, click to the next slide, and that will be you got it.
Thanks. So for folks that just arrived or for folks that just joined online, I'm Rhonda. And as part of our look at the community and what's here, what may be needed in the future, and what might evolve in the future, we did identify 3 of what we'll call opportunity sites. And big view on this map, we've got the Tower Marketplace over here on the west end of the alignment. And then the Wilder Grove, also another mall site that's underutilized right now. And then what we're calling the Pettingham site here right next to the Walmart. And we're really excited because the interesting thing about these 3 sites is that they kind of showcase a large, medium, and small version of redevelopment. So starting with a large one, that would be the Tower Marketplace over there near the Beltline. And this is about a 14-acre site. So this site gives us the most opportunity to get a lot of different land uses in there. So we're talking about a mix of a little bit of office, some retail, and then probably both for rent and for ownership residential, and a variety in that residential as well. So we're thinking we've got office on both ends of the development, and we've got a central spine, sort of a pedestrian promenade, if you will, going through the center of the development with a public open place and plaza, likely all those outdoor restaurants that we've really grown to love during the pandemic. And then residential lease and condos and apartments above that retail, those shops and restaurants in the center of the development. And then back here, townhouses and those smaller ownership products, so that we're offering a variety, both probably studio, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and then sort of a more vertically stacked use. And this is just some examples of what that town center, when I said we've got that central pedestrian spine with some amenities in the outdoor restaurants and shops. These are just some examples of what that might look like. Moving on to our medium site, this is the Wilders Grove Shopping Center. And those of you who are familiar with us, there is a grocery store here now. You might go here to buy your new furniture, sofas, couches, what have you. Or if your license expired, you might take advantage of the DMV up here. So this is a smaller site, but we're really excited about this site because it's actually sitting right here on the last of the BRT stations. So the BRT will come down New Bern Avenue, turn up here on New Hope Road, and then kind of loop around these median development in here by the Walmart, and then once it starts back to downtown Raleigh, this will be the station. So this is a site where we would really want to take advantage of the density bonuses that we talked about that's available in the TOD overlay district. And that means we can go a little bit higher than we normally could as long as we include affordable housing. So this is really exciting because we can get more people living right on top of this new transit investment that we're making. And we also are careful to make sure that we can include some green space in this development. In this case, we're looking at a linear park or a linear green space. And the exciting thing to us, we previously said this would be kind of a phase one development. You'd probably see one building go up first and then the second. But in the future, if land becomes more valuable and this becomes an attractive option, you might see the rest or pieces of this mall also redevelop. And so that we'd be looking to take this green spine and kind of connect it the whole way. And to be clear, that's pedestrians only. So we get our own space instead of sharing it with cars in this particular instance. And just to kind of help you imagine it, we're calling it a BRT Village. This is a little bit what that might look like. So we're standing across the street, maybe actually in the median, looking at that new BRT station, which tends to be a little bit bigger and a little bit more robust architecturally than your traditional bus stop. And you could slip right down in here, maybe grab a cup of coffee while you wait for the bus. And then if the coffee takes too long, you'd have to run and catch the bus, as we always do. And then your green spine would connect you back to the rest of the development as that happens. And then finally, this is our small site, Headingham. This is just kind of looking at that. You know, Walmarts and big format stores like that always have really big surface parking lots that they might be full that day before Christmas, but generally have some space. So we're looking at that and saying, how can this maybe work for the community a little bit better? And we're looking at small project, single building, and we kind of calculated this out. It is smaller, so we wouldn't be building a parking structure. We'd be parking those in the surface behind. So likely looking at maybe 5 stories of apartments over 1 story of retail. And that retail would actually get pretty good exposure, both to New Bern Avenue out here and to all of the folks parking in the Walmart parking lot. And we're thinking that the folks who live here would appreciate a slightly more green connection over to the BRT that's on the Hope Road over here. And then they've got all of these restaurants here, anything they can want to purchase at Walmart. This location is always also really exciting to us because it takes advantage and kind of plays on the energy of the Raleigh Beach Road residential that's coming online over here. And it also gives the folks who would live here the opportunity to come out on this new road. And this part of the road is already dedicated but not built. But there is an easement here for Duke Energy that's also planned in Raleigh's Greenway plan to be a new greenway, I don't know, to connect to the regional greenways. So this would be a fantastic location. You've got restaurants, you've got goods and services, you've got transit, and you can walk right across here or bike and connect to the whole regional transit system. So pretty exciting opportunity we could. And this is just an idea of what that might look like. Again, we're looking at like 5 or 6 stories. Some of these have businesses on the bottom and some of them are straight retail to straight residential to the ground floor. Is that the part that you want to go through
that's
again?
great. Thank you so much, Rhonda. So let's open it up for some questions. And I'll just, for everybody who's online and in person, we have this device here. So folks who are joining us online can hear everything that we're saying. And then if they unmute themselves and they say something, the speaker on here is going to say it out loud so we can all hear it. So I'll just say, we'll start with folks here in person. Do you have any questions?
I was curious about the development sites. Are those owned? Those are not city sites, I'm guessing.
No, they're not. And in fact, as Ron pointed out, we were looking at the different scales. What we identified this week as, likely redevelopment sites. And the Tower Marketplace is a great example where there's, it's been recently purchased. There's clear interest in redeveloping. We look forward to having conversations with them. But we're showing how and what would be the most likely opportunities. We are talking about, private property, and really it's the relationships, the opportunities that we can help create. Ultimately, it's the decision of the property owners of what they have. The one on the Walmart, the Hedingham one, that's actually a separate parcel. It's not Walmart's parcel, but we did in fact borrow a little bit of Walmart's parking to make it a little more exciting. And, that would require a real negotiation. We're realistic, we understand what we're doing, but again, we're looking at where we think there's a good chance, and to show different types that would fit within this area.
Yeah, we think these plans a lot of times can communicate to the property owners and developers of what's possible in the future. And then when the city says, we also support the zoning that's going to allow that,
Thank you.
that's creating the menu. It's saying, here's the options. And we've already done a little bit of the work. We've already kind of looked into the infrastructure. We've looked into how you can make this a really nice development. We're kind of rolling out the red carpet and saying, you just got to come in here and if you want to, build it.
And just as a caveat, it will never look like that. These are just kind of ideas. Imagine what might go in. It might be higher density, it might be lower density, might have a completely different mix of uses.
Any other questions here? Do we have any online?
Yep, let's check online. So folks joining us in the Zoom meeting, do you have any questions for us? Hey, Bob.
Hi. Yeah, I had a question on what's the potential time frame for the Tower Marketplace development, and is there anything that neighboring property owners could do to contribute to the process?
That's a great question. We very specifically did not put timeframes, years, etc. But generally we're looking, because we don't know, we have to build these relationships. Near term, we're thinking the 0 to 5 year area. It could happen quicker than that. It could take longer. If I don't know you, but if you were one of the property owners right next door and you were excited by this and you were excited by this potential opportunity, always let the city be aware, because who knows what larger potential opportunity could occur. And that, again, as Rhonda mentioned, that is typically what happens. When there's an opportunity and it starts to get serious, neighbors adjacent may or may not be interested in joining forces. They may have their own ideas, and combined, we're increasing the value together. So it's a good question, and it would be stay tuned, stay in touch, and if you can, let the city know.
Well, I'll say again, it is the private property owner's
100%.
decision of if and when they would want to pursue any kind of development. But again, what the key thing that the city is going to do is to say, if you need the zoning to change to make that development possible, we can use this process to say, here's that changing the zoning for that is good, and the city council can communicate that. And then in some cases, what's likely to happen at the end of this process is the city will say, we will come in and actually rezone some of these properties for additional height or density. And then the other thing that the city is doing is what Timothy walked us through and what Rhonda walked us through about parks and greenways and pedestrian connections. The city saying, we're going to invest in improving the public part of this area. And that's, again, signaling, communicating to those property owners, the city is willing to invest and do our part. And so we're inviting you to do your part too.
Yeah, Well, I've got Jason's email. I'll send Jason a follow-up email and ask if he could maybe connect me with the Tower Marketplace owner. I spent many years in California. I know a number of high net worth individuals who invest a lot in real estate, and they're pretty negative on California. So there, and so there could be some outside investment. And some of them, one of the guys, his daughter's going to Duke, and he's pretty bullish on North Carolina.
Okay, yeah, we'll work with you, Bob, and we'll definitely be in touch.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right. So we'll open it up again for final questions, both in person and online. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, obviously, affordable housing is a big topic. I think it's with investment coming in and prices and real estate going up. What tools? I guess I've heard of you past presentations of this. What tools might be implemented for this specific area from what you've seen?
Again, a part that you missed in this presentation, I'm speed. Everyone ignore how fast I'm doing this. Yeah, I broke down all the different, types, individuals. Yeah, I think if I get it to the right, piece, there's funding opportunities, and that is something we talked in more detail on Monday night. So I'll just, I won't use the slide so much, but we want to, there's federal funding that really supports the under 30%. There's always it's never enough. It's never enough in any part of the country, but it's important, and the city continues to do it. There are low-income housing tax credits that can be used in these mixed-use, mixed-income developments that can really cover some of the higher end, but still affordable groups. And there's this middle area that does often require people who don't fit in that under 30%, but are not making that much more. There's gaps that we've already identified, and we talked about this before. So we need to come up with different funding sources and different areas, and maybe kind of think about how they call the low-income housing tax credit, LIHTC, how the scoring works. Are there ways to prioritize this corridor? What we know is that we have to come up with different ways, and then again, the zoning, the density bonuses, all of those are creating different incentives and tools, different ways to maintain and or increase the affordable housing in this area. So it's a main tenet of this whole planning effort, and we call it this bucket of tools. There'll be a whole series. We know we have to come at it in every different way, and we also know too that there's different household types, and so there's there's families that may require 3 bedrooms, and there's singles, seniors that may require smaller ones, which also means you can build more for less, smaller units. So there's a whole bunch of ways and recommendations and tools that will be put together in this bucket, if you will. And that's an important question.
Can I jump in there?
Important.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things that are already in place that are going to help with that. The city has something called the penny for affordable housing, which is an increment on the property tax that the city levies. And that generates about $5 million a year that is solely dedicated for affordable housing. Another part is that there was an affordable housing bond that was passed last year. That's $80 million that will be spent on a combination of programs that includes supplemental financing for low-income housing tax credit projects. It also will have money for home repairs for existing homeowners, home loan assistance, and new construction projects for affordable housing. And then, of course, maintaining the city's existing affordable housing programs. And then, like Steve mentioned, there's something called a transit overlay district. And so that was approved. The district itself, so the words in the zoning code, was approved by the city council last week. Now, what happens after that is that we actually have to map that district on locations in the real world. And that's when it takes effect, because it's a zoning law. And so that transit overlay district is going to be one of the focus points of this plan, is that we're going to basically say, where does that overlay get mapped along the New Bern corridor. And it's going to be a lot of these commercial properties right along New Bern Avenue. And what it does is it says, if you include affordable housing units in your apartment project, you can build a taller building. If your maximum height in the zoning says 3 stories, but you include enough affordable units, you can build up to 5 stories. You don't have to go through a rezoning. You don't have to take the extra time and expense to do that. You can just go ahead and do it. But you got to provide the affordable units. And so we really think that's going to be a big improvement. But you know, it takes some of these places filling in with more development. The other thing is we had a text change recently called missing middle. And what that does is it allows duplex on pretty much every home lot in the city. So even neighborhoods that used to be, you could only have a single family house, now you can build a duplex. And that it also allows townhouses in the residential 6 zoning district, where those were not allowed before. And it also reduces the amount of land area that's required for apartments in the residential 10 district. So reducing the land cost reduces the cost of the housing units that go on the land. And so all those things, it's increasing the supply of housing, the variety of housing. So, and the other thing that happened a couple years ago is making it legal to have an accessory dwelling unit. So like a garage apartment in your backyard. And so it's a series of changes that the city is doing to basically say, like Steve said, it's all of the above. We have to focus on housing we have to put the money in, we have to make it easier to build, and we have to have more types and more supply everywhere in the city. And so that's a big part of this study is how do we encourage that in this specific area? Because in addition to the housing affordability, when you're close to the bus rapid transit, you also get the transportation affordability. And so when you get both of those together, that really makes a big difference for people.
Let's follow this. I know in the past I've heard this about land acquisition. Would that be also part of, like, would we consider that in this area as well, or is that something that?
That will be a little bit of this plan. There's generally are separate continuous, the city is looking for that because of the $5 million a year we get from the property tax and the $80 million housing bond. So there's going to be a little bit of that from this process, but that's mostly just the city's always doing that. But yeah, definitely the city can buy property. But a big thing that we're seeing right now is actually the low-income housing tax credits, which is a federal tax credit that basically allows someone to borrow money cheaply to build an apartment development usually. That there's a lot of private developers that are getting into that type of development because they can get a little bit of subsidy from the city. They get that federal tax credit. And so even though the rents that they're charging are low enough to be considered affordable, they still make a profit, or at least cover their costs. If they're a nonprofit, they cover their costs and have enough left over to cover the overhead. So, it's not always that the city has to be the one building it. It can be private companies or nonprofits, but it's all about finding the most benefit for every dollar that the city's spending. We want to get the most housing and the best housing.
Good answers. That's why we bring him.
All right. Any other questions before we sign off? All righty. So like Steve said, you can learn more. We're going to have a lot of this information posted for you, including a recording of this video. If you just go to the city website and search station area planning, or if you just Google New Bern station area planning on Google, you can find it. We thank everybody for being here and have a great night.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.